But either way, we have started. Welcome to Adults Get Lit. Tonight we are comparing Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, one of the famous dystopian novels of all time, with 1993's Demolition Man. Man, have you ever watched a movie from your childhood and then realized it was not good? Just not very good. That's what I got out of Demolition Man this last time around. My history with Demolition Man was that it was one of the only VHS tapes, for those of you viewers who are under the age of about 30, I guess. VHS was what came before DVDs, and you only had like 10 of them. And for some reason, my grandpa had Demolition Man, so my sister and I watched that probably far more than any 10, 11, or 12-year-olds should have watched Demolition Man. And so I had some fond memories of it, went back and watched it, and it was not good for a lot of reasons. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about Brave New World, which I have taught before. Hey, Clint. Clint says Mrs. Doubtfire also does not hold that well. That's sad to me. I had kind of had my fingers crossed for Mrs. Doubtfire. There's a lot that I don't want to watch. Hook. I don't want to watch Hook. I'm worried that Hook is real not good. Anyways, let's go and start with Demolition Man, since that's the easier one to get out of the way, and we always like to start with a segment that we call For the Kid Who Didn't Read the Book. This is For the Kid Who Didn't Watch the Movie, and if you didn't watch Demolition Man, I don't blame you. So, Demolition Man, 1993 film by Marco Brambilla. Remember, this takes place in 1990, or made in 1993, okay? So in the near future of 1993, which is to say 1996. You guys remember 1996? A rogue loose cannon cop named John Spartan, played by Sylvester Stallone, accidentally somehow causes the deaths of 30 hostages in pursuit of a criminal named Simon Phoenix, who's played by Wesley Snipes, with the hair that inspired Dennis Rodman. I am not making that up. Dennis Rodman's hair in the 90s was because of this movie. So, Spartan is sentenced to 80 years in cryo prison because of the death of these hostages. So, in 1996... we have technology somehow that freezes people to make them go to prison, right? So, instead, he is unfrozen in the year 2032 in what is now a utopia to catch Phoenix, who has escaped during a parole hearing because all the cops in the future have been sissified. The cops just can't apprehend him. He just destroys all of them. Spartan is aided by the 21st century cop and history enthusiast Lenina Huxley, played by Sandra Bullock. Her first name comes from one of the main characters in Brave New World, and Huxley, obviously, is Aldous' last name. Turns out that Phoenix's escape was engineered by Dr. Cocteau, the society's engineer and leader. The whole deal is to hunt down Edgar Friendly. He's the leader of an underground resistance movement, played by Dennis Leary, doing his best Bill Hicks impression, which was essentially the first 20 years, actually still all of Dennis Leary's career. I'm sorry if you like Dennis Leary. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. Dennis Leary's a no-talent hack. Phoenix reveals he's already killed the hostages, so Spartan went to jail for nothing. They have a fight in the cryo prison, and Spartan freezes Phoenix with the cryo prison goo and then kicks his head off. I have a soundbite for this somewhere.
Finish him!
Yeah, there it is. Okay, so, that is... Demolition Man. Demolition Man had some cool ideas of the future circa 1993. Welcome, Abby. And by the way, if you're around, sign off in the comments so that I can see who I'm talking to. It's good to see you guys again, virtually, of course. So, things that Demolition Man gets right. The Schwarzenegger Library. So this is, 8 years before Arnold runs for governor of California, and they make a joke about him being the president of the United States. That's pretty good. We got self-driving cars. We got video conferencing. They talk a lot about the pandemics that they've faced. So Sandra Bullock mentions that there are several sexually transmitted disease pandemics, starting with AIDS, which was a very real fear circa 1993. Conservatives hate them. That's why Sly Stallone completely ignores all of that. Hello, Cody Pruitt. Just for fun, just to explain, that is not me. That is my very interesting Austin doppelganger that I only know on social media so far, and He seems like a very nice dude. I'm glad he's here. Thanks for being here, Cody. This is a fun one. Things that Demolition Man gets right. Tights as pants. Now, I know that the majority of my friends here do not work at an American high school, but we have heard every day for years on the announcements reminders that tights are not pants. Well, Sandra Bullock proves that wrong in this movie. Part of her official police uniform, they're tights, but they're also pants. So work tights, I guess. Things Demolition Man gets wrong about the future. So there's the 3 seashells joke, which Sylvester Stallone has tried to explain quite a lot. There's no toilet paper in the future. There's just 3 shells. You make of that what you will. The franchise wars in Taco Bell. Taco Bell is the only restaurant of the future. That could still happen. We've got 12 years until that. Virtual sex is still not a thing. You don't put on a headset to have sex. You still do that the old-fashioned way. And here's the real problem with Demolition Man. So Wesley Snipes' character is essentially what was a 90s fear of a super predator. This was an actual thing that legislation was passed in fear of. The crime rate had been going up, and the idea was that young black men in particular would grow up so entrenched in selling drugs in high crime areas that they would become absolute sociopaths. And Wesley Snipes is that in this movie. And he can only be stopped by a cop that plays outside of the rules. This cop happens to kill 30 hostages in something that's never really explored. And then he's frozen for 80 years. That's his punishment here. Now, this is just a year after the Rodney King beating. So this response to what was the Rodney King beating and the LA protests and riots that followed is that, if cops have too much oversight, we'll live in a dangerous future, and we need to trust cops' instincts. And that was a terrible take in 96, 93, and it's a terrible take now. And this is not anti-cop in any way, but it's just the idea that the unfettered use of power can only lead to good things in the hands of police officers. Obviously isn't something that seems to work well. And it is pretty close to home. So after all that, I was pretty loath to watch Demolition Man after the first 10 minutes, regardless of some of the better bits that came later. Demolition Man, Tim, is so much better than Judge Dredd. Somehow Armand Assante is Sylvester Stallone's clone in Judge Dredd, because I'm not sure that the screenwriters knew what a clone was. Let's see. There was a toilet paper shortage. Clint, you are correct. I'm not sure that anybody actually... Clint, did you replace toilet paper with seashells recently? Am I reading that comment right? And so I loved my DARE officer as well in 1994. Fun fact, DARE was actually a program that was not only ineffective, it made more kids do drugs. There have been studies out there that have said that if you went through a DARE program, you were actually more likely to try marijuana. So that's fun. Let's see. Clint, I assume that's about the seashells. Macy, if you're watching, have you figured out what he did with the shells? I don't even know. Anyways, let's talk about Brave New World. Oh, I'm sorry. I have a lot going on in my screen right now, so let's take off. We had Demolition Man. What works? Demolition Man. What doesn't? And so let's go ahead and get into Brave New World. And we start with For the Kid Who Didn't Read the Book. Just out of curiosity in the comments, let me know. Macy failed DARE? How was DARE a class that you got a grade for? Oh, I get it now. Wow, Macy. I'm sorry or good for you? I'm not quite sure which one of those things I support, but either way, glad you're here. Okay, so Brave New World. Let me know if you read Brave New World in high school, if you reread it recently. We've got the miniseries coming out, and we're going to talk about that. But for right now, let's just do a plot summary of Brave New World. So, in the far future, assembly line capitalism has become a religion. Humans are bred in test tube batches and genetically modified into castes. And so hyper-intelligent, hyper-fit manager alphas direct intentionally brain-damaged deltas in this caste system. Children and adults are subliminally hypnotized into being satisfied with their caste and their job. Promiscuity is normalized and encouraged in order to completely destroy long-term attachments and families, which are dangerous for the stability of civilization for some reason. Powerful narcotic called soma is readily available for anyone who starts to have sad feelings. We meet Bernard, who is a whiny incel alpha. For a guy who lives in a society where promiscuity is encouraged, it's incredible how whiny he is about not having sex. So these guys are in any society, we learn. He is pining after Lenina, an attractive and popular beta, on a vacation to a savage reservation to see remnants of a Native American society in New Mexico. They meet a woman named Linda, who is from their own culture, who was stranded decades ago while pregnant. She's raised a son, John, who's called John the Savage, but Linda's inability to adopt to Native culture made her and her son outcasts. So, Abby read it in high school. This brings us to our next segment, the bar cam. And tonight's drink is called the Soma Sub. So I was thinking about this. Alcohol is banned in the future of Demolition Man. And Soma is the drug of choice in Brave New World. However, when Linda gets stuck in the Navajo reservation, I can't remember the tribe reservation, the New Mexico reservation, the only thing she has is mezcal. And she gets really drunk and really hungover all the time off of mezcal. So what we're talking about here is a mezcal old-fashioned. So it's simple syrup, a muddled grapefruit and cherry. And guys, if you haven't given tequila a chance since high school or college when you had way too much Jose Cuervo and puked forever, try some of this stuff. It's called Oaxaca. It's a mezcal. It's very, very good. I go with the stuff that has the green color on the bottom. I don't know what the difference is, except I know that this one's delicious. Anyways, you muddle all that together into what is functionally an old-fashioned. And this guy's very, very tasty. I didn't have oranges, so I used grapefruit tonight, but that's okay because grapefruit plays very well with mezcal. So give that a try sometime. Yeah, it's tasty. It's tasty. It's good and smoky. Let's see. Oh, Cody, so you are new to Brave New World and Demolition Man. I got mixed feelings on both, and we're going to talk about those. But I'm going to move on with the summary. So John the Savage, Linda's son, has pretty much memorized the complete works of Shakespeare. It's the only book he had, and he's excited to see what he refers to as the Brave New World. This is a quote from The Tempest's Miranda. However, once there, he is repulsed by this society's obsession with him, its reliance on soma, its pornographic pop culture. They have movies that are essentially empathic pornography. He falls in love with Lenina, and she seems to fall in love with him, which is banned in that society. But he beats her when she tries to have sex with him because he believes it is immoral and repugnant to have sex with someone you only know casually. So, Linda, John's mom, is so excited to have soma again and not mezcal that she doses herself to death. John starts a riot by tossing out a soma delivery. Bernard is outcast to an island for encouraging the riot, but John is forced to stay by Mustafa Mon, the world leader. He exiles himself to a lighthouse. He starts flagellating himself for his perceived sin. He soon becomes the object of obsession by the media, the paparazzi. When Lenina shows up in a crowd that's come to gawk at him, he beats her, and then participates in a soma-fueled orgy. Those last couple of pages are real weird. Sarah, are you following all this?
I read this book. I don't remember.
Oh, yeah.
So much of
Yeah,
it.
there's a lot that happens in this. My producer
I read it
is on
early
hand.
in high school.
Yeah, it gets a lot of if you rush the last 3 pages, a lot happens, and I've had students miss it before. So John awakes to discover what he's done, and then hangs himself in the lighthouse. So that is Brave New World. So let's see. Let's move on to. Let's move on to what works in... Oh, no, let's start with how is this like Demolition Man? It's a good question. So, a lot of people questioned this pick beyond, or this comparison beyond the whole Lenina Huxley thing. But you've got subliminal or hypnotic implants while people are in sleep or stasis. You start off in what appears to be a utopia that is heavily socially engineered for stability and happiness. You've got John the Savage compared to Sly Stallone's John Spartan, main character named Lenina. You have oversight through ubiquitous speakers. It's the only way Sylvester Stallone can get toilet paper is by swearing. There's an interesting thing in Demolition Man there that the worst thing a conservative satire could think of was that you wouldn't be able to cuss in public anymore because these PC liberals are stealing our freedom. Yeah, it's a thing. So my problem with both of these utopias is there's an assumption there that if people were to get bored in a utopia, it'd be the worst thing in the world. Lenina in Demolition Man is craving some excitement, and there's no crime, and they say that that's really sad, that there's no crime, because there's nothing for police to do in the future. With Brave New World, they keep people high on drugs to basically keep them from thinking thoughts, and I think it's kind of misanthropic to think that humanity wouldn't actually do something good with itself if all of its basic needs were taken care of. Like, what could we do if we had, like, food and poverty and resources figured out? I don't know. Well, that's right. We could go explore space. That's totally a thing we could do, and a thing that you could imagine if you were actually like optimistic about the future of humanity. So, I don't know. I got kind of a chip on my shoulder. Oh, the mustard warm water drinking. Thank you for that, Abby. So John the Savage, basically, there's a misreading there from Aldous Huxley's part on what Ipecac does, which is kind of this ritual purification process where you drink this drug and then you vomit compulsively. And it's used as a religious purification process, and John just uses it because he's got this weird puritanical guilt that he got from reading Shakespeare somehow. Like, somehow John reads the total works of Shakespeare and doesn't pick up on any of the sex jokes or the fun parts, like only the really prudish stuff. So, let's talk about what Brave New World got right, and then we'll talk about what it gets wrong. So what works? Contrast to 1984. I read a really interesting article researching this, that China has gone the 1984 route, right? The Big Brother's watching you, social conditioning. And the U.S. has gone the Brave New World route, where essentially we're given everything that we want in such a way that we don't actually have any interest in the people who govern us. I guess that'd be a good observation if it was true. If we didn't have people protesting right now in the streets, that would be a more accurate observation. I do like some of the commentary on runaway capitalism, the idea that clothes have to be disposable in the society of Brave New World. That's kind of the whole thing going on there, is that everything is serving the economy. There's some really funny stuff worshiping Henry Ford, and when Ford talks about psychology, he calls himself Freud. So at some point, they've combined all of these aspects of 20th century technology into one kind of super religion based on capitalism. There is Bernard's change of heart, I think, is really, really interesting. Bernard seems like he's going to be the main character, and then we meet John. Bernard becomes famous because he's kind of John's handler, and immediately becomes the jerk that he always hated. That rang very true to me, that Bernard suddenly gets recognition and he becomes a hypocrite that's actually really enjoying his society because people are finally having sex with him. Let's see. Digital distraction, I think, is a really interesting one. Ubiquitous pharmaceuticals. I should have thought about the way I was going to be able to say that before I actually typed it like that. But yeah, the opioid crisis. If Soma sounds like anything, it sounds like the ability to check out on opioids and the critique of capitalism, like I said. Okay, so with all that said, let's talk about what Brave New World gets wrong. Is Aldous Huxley a prude? Aldous Huxley kind of seems like a prude. The idea that women get to determine who they sleep with and that it might be more than one person really squigs him out. He does. I don't understand why that's the worst thing in the world. And John we're supposed to empathize with, but Lenina just tries to have sex with John and he beats her nearly to death after they both acknowledge that they like each other. That's not an empathetic main character. That's not somebody who you want to kind of cast in your hero role. And all this is kind of hard to parse out because this is satire. And I mean real satire, not like the satire somebody posts when they're actually just being racist. But that brings me to my next point. This book is kind of racist. It's kind of weird how when he talks about the lower castes, they're always a different race. Like, Huxley goes way out of his way to talk about how we do all these things scientifically to make betas lesser than alphas and deltas lesser than betas, but then every time he describes beta or an epsilon, more often than not, there's some sort of minority. So that's kind of weird. It's kind of like he's giving credence to the racist ideas that he's criticizing, if that makes sense. And then Linda and Lenina are the most interesting characters, I think. Like, Linda's got a very, very interesting story in that she's stranded in this literal old world and having to discover pregnancy in a culture that's never experienced it before, and having to raise a child in a world where, like, she's never known children, and the idea of motherhood is sort of pornographic. So that's really interesting, and she is written off as kind of one of the dumber characters in this, and then just kind of dies in a soma trance. But while we're talking about all this stuff, let's see. I did want to talk about, the adaptation. So I'm going to go ahead and play the trailer for the upcoming Brave New World miniseries. Here we go.
Welcome to New London.
You are an essential part of a perfect social body. Everybody in their place. Everybody happy now.
Everyone belongs to everyone else.
There's no pain there, John. No fear. I want that for you.
Virus enters a cell. That's how it begins.
You know, I've been watching you people. You gotta ask yourself, if this place is so perfect, why is it upside down?
We're at the beginning of something necessary.
All right. So, I mean, that looks cool, I guess. Kind of Hunger Games-ish. I think what I'm wondering here, and what I want to kind of get around to for the takeaway, but there's a couple of things I want to talk about. If you couldn't tell, I'm not really impressed, and I've taught this book before. I've read it a couple of times in my life, and reading it now, I don't know if it quite deserves the legacy that it has. Huxley and Demolition Man, in kind of a lighter way, are saying, like, wouldn't this be the worst thing in the world? And granted, like, the idea of the test tube, Clint, that is true. It does seem like the orgy plays a much bigger role on TV. They actually make the parts that we're supposed to be worried about look a lot more interesting in the miniseries, and Demi Moore's in this one. So there's that. Demi Moore is actually playing Linda in the miniseries, which is kind of the only reason that I'll tune in. That's an interesting choice. Oh, and young Han Solo, I think, is John the Savage. So the idea here is the worst thing that we can think of in a future that leans too far to the left is that no one has the right to be sad. It's also kind of interesting to me that a writer like Huxley would feel the need to, like, convince people that Shakespeare needed saving, that the greatest author of all time could be so easily forgotten. I don't know. I've got a little more faith in humanity than that. And even Mustafa Mond, the world controller, is very familiar with Shakespeare. That's kind of a thing with these dystopias, is that the leader of the world still gets to do all the things that everybody's not allowed to. So a very fun version of Brave New World, if you'd like to check that out, and kind of a melding of that with 1984, is Equilibrium with Christian Bale. So it's all of this, except it's emotional suppression, and then you add gun kung fu. And I think just the words gun kung fu are really all I need to say about that. So go check that out. Sean Bean is in Equilibrium. And spoiler alert, because Sean Bean is a walking spoiler, he dies. Okay, so I don't think I'm ruining anything for you there. So what's our takeaway here? Now, I know I'm kind of parsing this through my, modern sensibilities. I'm sorry, Clint, do I need to play the Finish Him clip for Sean Bean? I didn't download that for nothing, so, Sean Bean.
Finish him!
Yeah. So, I always understand, and this is very important, to meet authors where they are, right? When Demolition Man came out, it's 1993. Where's the culture then? When Huxley's writing Brave New World, it's the 40s. What's going on then? And I need to give Huxley the benefit of the doubt here. People kept asking him, hey man, if this is such a bad thing, what's your idea of a good society? What's a true utopia? And Huxley wrote a book called The Island, and he takes all of the ideas, drug use, sexual liberation, and he incorporates them as important elements in a perfect society. I have not read it. I tried once to impress a girl that I was dating in college. I married her, so that worked out. But I didn't actually finish that book.
I was under the impression that you finished it.
Oh.
Yikes.
I might have to cut this short. I just really messed up the rest of my quarantine. Anyways, the problem is this is not that book. So we can't take Huxley's Utopia into consideration when the only book that we're talking about is his dystopia. And you look at books that are happening and things that are happening around that time and saying, was anybody doing this better? Is this truly a product of its time, or could it have done a little better? And for Demolition Man, it could have done way better, right? To look at everything in the wake of Rodney King and say that the problem here was cops not being able to do the job the way that they thought they needed to. Unfettered reign with no oversight. That's a really bad take in 1993. And so with Brave New World, how do we sort of tackle this stuff? It's interesting to me that the actual enjoyment of sex by anybody is kind of inconceivable. It's a way to pass the time. John the Savage doesn't really have any, positive feelings associated with sexuality, which I guess you would get for somebody who grew up with Puritans, but not necessarily with Native Americans. So that's kind of a weird thing. I think Brave New World it's interesting as a historical artifact. Oh, forgot to mention about Aldous Huxley. I've got The Doors up here because, to Aldous Huxley's credit, The Doors are named after a novel by Aldous Huxley, which is The Doors of Perception. Not too long after Brave New World, he moved to America, spent a lot of time in Taos, New Mexico, and from what I understand, did all the drugs. So he was no stranger to Soma himself and wrote a book called The Doors of Perception about how hallucinogens can kind of squeegee your third eye, to quote Bill Hicks and not Dennis Leary. So Brave New World is interesting as a historical artifact. For example, all the clothes have zippers on them, everything is a one zip off, which what I didn't know in researching this was that the zipper was a recent inclusion in most clothes at the time, and it was kind of a symbol of promiscuity because it made pants easy to get off. I know, man, crazy. But as far as dystopias go, I can think of way more thought-provoking, way more terrifying dystopias. You can see one on the news most days. So I don't know that this dystopia that we see in Brave New World, aside from some of the Demolition Man stuff, is accurate. Yeah, so Cody, interesting thing about Demolition Man, definitely overproduced like Batman and Robin. It was the only movie made by a guy who is otherwise a graphic artist, which I think is really interesting. And then the script, the script was accused of plagiarism by a dude from either Hungary or the Czech Republic. And evidently there was this thing where when the Berlin Wall fell, all of these sci-fi writers who had been writing all of this stuff under communism, their work started getting out and they had no awareness of things like copyright law. So this Hungarian guy says that a Hungarian court found that Demolition Man borrowed from his work 90%, that essentially it stole directly from him. But because he wasn't under any protection of law, he didn't have to be paid any royalties. So it was kind of a ripoff. At that point, it was a terrorist and a counter-terrorist that were unfrozen, not a super predator and a really tough rogue cop. So yeah, I think that is what I have on Demolition Man and Brave New World. As a high school teacher, I would still offer this as an option, but I don't necessarily think the ideas are compelling enough to teach again. 1984, yeah. Handmaid's Tale, definitely. But with Brave New World, I don't know. I think our society has caught up to a lot of that and said, you know what, this isn't so bad. Things like test tube babies have allowed a lot of people the ability to have children. I don't know, things like pharmaceuticals have allowed a lot of people to live longer, to get past some pretty crippling mental and physical illness, even though we are living through an opioid epidemic. There's just way scarier things out there than things in Brave New World. Clint Buck says, so what jingles are number one hits in our dystopian future? I did like that. Oh, you guys, I gotta play this line from Demolition Man that makes no sense because it's so good. It sounds like, speaking of time travel, that a writer went back to the past. I'm gonna play this clip from Demolition Man where they're explaining the seashells, but I want you to listen to Sandra Bullock's last line in here about heterosexual men from the 20th century. Here we go.
Sir, I formally convey my presence.
How you doing?
We are not used to physical contact greetings.
Germs.
Look, I don't know if you guys know it, but you're out of toilet paper.
Did you say toilet paper?
Oh, they used handfuls of wadded paper back in the 20s.
I'm happy that you're happy, but the place where you're supposed to have the toilet paper, you got this little shelf with 3 seashells on it.
He doesn't know how to use the 3 seashells. I can see how that could be confusing.
I don't believe it. Is that you, Spartan?
No. Zach? Zach Lamb? What happened to you?
I got older.
My God. I remember when you were a snot-nosed rookie pilot.
They finally grounded me.
Shit. You're a damn good flyer.
You are fined 2 credits for violation of the verbal morality statute.
I'll be right back.
They seem to be friends, yet he speaks to him in the most profane manner.
Well, if you had read my study, you would know that this is how insecure heterosexual males used to bond.
I knew that.
Thanks a lot, you shit.
You are fined. You are fined twice for repeated violations of the verbal morality statute.
So much for the seashells. See you in a few minutes.
Okay, I'm sorry. What is that line doing in there? Was that like a takedown of toxic masculinity in a Sylvester Stallone movie from 1993? Sandra Bullock, how are you so lovable in everything? And who's writing your lines for you that don't belong in this action movie? Because that makes no sense. Good on them for sneaking that in there. Anyways, I think that's all I got. But I do want to talk. Oh, what goes on the syllabus? Let's see. I didn't answer the Jingles question, so I got to do that. The Thundercloud Subs one is a good one. Let's see. I think I'd like to... What's the Coke song? Yeah, the one. I'd like to teach the world to sing. I think that would be a good one. Dreamt up by Don Draper. I thought that was kind of funny that advertisements in the future... if you've ever traveled anywhere for a little while and then you come back, or you've just taken a break from TV and people start using TV slogans, it gets really weird. What was the Bud Light one a little while ago? It was like Bully or Duffy or something like that. I had no idea what we were talking about. Double Mint Gum is totally on there. I think the Mentos song should go on there. Tim O'Brien, let's talk about yours. What goes on the syllabus in its place? I think I mentioned Handmaid's Tale is a good one for examining dystopias. 1984, I think, is that one. Definitely stands the test of time. There's some really interesting sci-fi stuff by Octavia Butler. DQ, that's what I like about Texas. I think we're being very Texas-centric, guys. I think that's fine. Octavia Butler, Kindred was the one. That's not necessarily a dystopia. And here's another thing too, like when we talk about the canon, especially in a high school, most high school literature teachers are coming around to the idea that the canon's kind of bunk. It's kind of a way of maintaining a certain narrative about Western scholarship that is becoming less and less true, and also the idea that it should be more and more inclusive. Ralph Ellison and Invisible Man wouldn't be in the old canon. Toni Morrison's Beloved wouldn't be in the old canon. So, and the funny thing about sci-fi is by the time that it is so old that it becomes irrelevant, people recognize that it was good enough to be a part of the canon. So there's great sci-fi out there right now that I don't think people are looking at just because it's so new. So I think that's kind of the job of a good teacher. Not that I'm always that or even usually that, but the whole idea is that we have to keep looking for what the next thing might be. DQ Gone to Texas, that's not, are you just, Clint, are you mixing up my song with Dairy Queen again? My song is Ford is the Best in Gone to Texas. I think you are misremembering my lyrics. Hey, I have a question for everybody out there. I assume that this is most of you, but spoiler free. What is your favorite Harry Potter book? Because here's the thing. My producer, my super producer and wife has been reading Harry Potter for the first time, and she's asking me questions about Harry Potter and saying, "Oh, this Sirius Snape doesn't look like, or Severus Snape doesn't look like a good guy, or this Sirius Black, I think he's out to get Harry." And I can't tell her anything. I think it's a testament to my poker face that she's brought all this stuff up and has not. I have not spoiled anything for you, have I? Okay. So I would love to do one of these on Harry Potter. Sarah just finished Prisoner of Azkaban.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of book 4.
She's in the middle of book 4. So I'm thinking with book 4, 5, 6, or 7. And I'm kind of thinking of 7, but I don't want Sarah to have to rush her experience for us to be able to do one of these for the last book. Ooh, we've got 2 Prisoners of Azkaban, though, by at least one person whose opinion I respect. So, man, that's strong, guys. Okay, I might consider going back and doing that for Prisoner of Azkaban. The thing is, if we did it in the near future, it would have to be just Prisoner of Azkaban. It could have, there couldn't be any talk of what happened in the future, how certain storylines are paid off, just because Sarah's still reading it. So I think that is definitely a thing that we can do. Okay, Danny's down for Azkaban. Ooh. Okay. Paul puts in a vote for Half-Blood Prince because of the Quidditch. I like that. Sarah's actually at the Quidditch World Cup right now, or has just passed the Quidditch World Cup and is entering the Triwizard Tournament in book 4. So that's a good one. Also, while we're talking about the classics, anybody have any more questions about Tim? Tim, we're not going to do your book on here, man. I'm sorry. What's that? Goblet of Fire, that's the one that Sarah's on right now. And while we're talking about classics, it's getting further between when I do these things, especially since I've been doing this whole 30 days of songs. Ooh, Danny, good take. Yeah, no, we knew. We got Empire. Yeah, all you had to say was Empire. You're my sister. We know each other. That's interesting. I don't know if I would have called Azkaban being Empire. I think that's a good take. The movie is certainly where they start getting better. Okay, so I think that's all I have for Brave New World. Short version is not my favorite, but it actually kind of worked out because it's the lightest dystopia that I think that we could possibly read while living our own dystopia in the quarantine. So until next time, enjoy your drinks, read good books, send me suggestions for other ones, and if anybody has a take on how those 3 seashells work, please let me know. Good night, everybody.